Okay, well, welcome. We're going to do our fourth value from COWw, do no harm.
No.
So today we're going to talk about that a little bit. And when we're talking about do no harm, we want to discuss what it means to you, what it means to us, and basically we're talking about not just physical, we're also talking about psychological and life, basically. So what does it actually mean when we talk about do no harm? We of course have we live life, and like the other animals and what have you on the planet, you can't absolutely do no harm to anything. It is not possible. I mean, you slap a mosquito, you say something short to someone else, maybe you any number of things that basically take you off into a direction where you've done some harm to something. But what we're talking about is things that we might have control over, things that we really can pause and think about a little bit and not just lunge forward and, the heck with everything in our way. So that's pretty much where we're starting out today.
Okay. One thing I'd like to say is to remind the people who've been watching us here on YouTube is that the Daughters of Wisdom never judge. So you may find yourself during our discussion today about do no harm, maybe trying to be judgmental about yourself or other people, and that's not what this is about. It's all about reflecting on how the idea of doing no harm fits in your life. So I just wanted to start off with that. There really is no room for doing harm. I'd like to get serious in the beginning. We want to use some examples today because we think that that is very helpful with this topic. And my first one is societal. And that is using the example of Flint, Michigan, which I'm hoping all of our viewers know something about. And that is the lead that has made the water there undrinkable. And I also think it might have made it not good for people to use it for taking baths or taking showers or even washing their clothing. And that's an example of a society not fulfilling its kind of value of doing no harm to its citizens. On a personal level, it might be something like recycling, which is, you're at the beach and you've got that spare plastic water bottle, and they've got a recycling bin right there at the top of the beach, but you just leave it behind. And I recently saw a YouTube video in which there were a group of surfers who were cleaned up a beach in Vietnam that was just completely littered with plastic, even though in this area they had a plastic recycling program. So doing no harm can be something as simple as spending a little bit of time cleaning up after yourself, or on a bigger basis, writing your congressman or your senator when you hear about something like what happened with the quality of water in Flint, Michigan. So nothing is too little or too late in terms of doing no harm. So
yeah, and I want to add in here too, because when we're talking about doing no harm, it's a good idea to reflect upon ourselves a bit. For example, what is it inside of us that as kids you want to kick over an anthill? I mean, really, why are you doing that? The ants aren't doing anything other than their usual ant thing. And you go over there as a kid and you go kicking over an anthill. Well, you're doing a lot of harm. And frankly, in that case, I would hope that perhaps it might be the parents who might talk to little whoever and say, this is not a good idea, that kind of thing. Because why? Why would you want to do that? Or, it's not just that action. It's what is inside of us that's causing that action.
That's a really good point. No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So basically, the other thing I was going to comment on in reference to Charlie's recycling idea there is, I remember years ago, and this is years ago, I got very excited when I saw a video, and this happened to be on PBS, about how the Japanese handled their recycling then. and I'm sure it's only improved over the years. But it's as she's pointing out, it's a fairly small thing as things go in our society. And why shouldn't we have a really good functioning recycling? It would help cut down on all kinds of problems.
Yeah. Well, let me use one more example that could be both about society and about us on a personal basis, and something that is probably coming up in most of our lives. I think spring is just around the corner. And that is kind of back to Peggy's talking about bugs in the house and things of that nature. I'm a gardener, so I have weeds. And before I moved to where I'm currently living, I lived in Florida for a long period of time. And I used a lot of this really big word, glycophosphates, on my lawn to make the weeds go away and to keep it nice and green. Well, glycophosphates have been shown by science to be harmful to pollinators like birds and bees and butterflies and moths. And my favorite saying is, no bees, no food.
Yes.
So we can think about things like this, do no harm. And so my tip for people this year who also may be gardeners or like to have a lovely lawn is to read the back of the labels on things that you purchase to take care of your yard. So this do no harm idea can be personal, societal, and it can start with really small things. So
Indeed, and it's true. And I had, in fact, it's easy to find by going online and doing a quick search. You're probably online right now if you're watching YouTube. For example, last year, too, another example, I had a problem with ants. Now, I'm going to get some people saying, yeah, do no harm, and then they're going to go, try to discourage ants or kill ants or whatever. But here's the thing. We are beings on the planet, and we do cause harm regardless. The trick is being aware of it and deciding which is absolutely necessary. I mean, for example, you kill a plant to eat food, okay? Or in the people who eat meat, you kill an animal to eat food. You've done harm, but if you don't, you die. Okay, there's a trade-off. So with the ant situation, I went online, and you can find it by searching quickly, a recipe for ant repellent, ant killer kind of thing that was totally natural. It's a combination of vinegar and baking soda and a few drops of something else. I forget. You need to find it, and it did the job perfectly. It was no chemicals, nothing harsh to the environment. Didn't kill my bees.
Yay!
So, it's possible to make these changes. We encourage it. Again, as Charlie points out, we don't judge people. I get a little upset over things like extreme chemicals when you do know they're doing damage, but I can't control you, and you can't control me, so there we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we move on to giving a couple of other examples, I think when we're talking about doing no harm, we need to talk a little bit about bullying and gossip. So I think we all know in our hearts of hearts that bullying is a way of doing harm.
The psychological side of do no harm.
The psychological side of do no harm. And the same thing is true about gossiping. I have engaged in gossiping, I assure you. And it can be very hurtful to another person. And just remember what I said in the beginning of this video, which is we really promote people to reflect on the way in which they live their life. And this is something that you could do for the next week until we meet back with you. And that's to think about, have I gossiped? And did I gossip with the idea of like putting somebody else down? The person doesn't need to be in the room for you to be gossiping about them and actually hurting them in a way, because you're hurting their reputation. If I'm gossiping with Peggy about someone else, I'm purposefully, maybe not consciously, but I'm purposefully hurting their reputation. So I think it's really important we talk a little bit about that psychological do no harm. So
I agree, and we all know it's out there. And for example, in the situation of friends, family, spouses, here's the thing: we know pretty much when you know someone well, really well, you know where the, we'll call them so-called bodies are buried. So you know really how to hurt these people.
Yeah, you
And
do.
if you get in an argument or some circumstance where you feel like you want to really just get in a good jab, or it might not be where you're actually planning it, but it happens in the moment. It's like when you're in these situations, pause before you talk. There's no reason to do that as a purposeful thing, especially to people you care about.
Yeah.
So it's something that needs to be thought about. And as Charlie was saying, we keep saying here at COWw, reflect, think a little bit before you do something or before you say something. It's really important to not just kind of fly off the handle and be carried away by whatever emotions or instincts in the moment.
Yeah. I'm going to give a little plug. I haven't told Peggy about this.
Oh my.
But we're putting together a journal from the Daughters of Wisdom. And since we're talking about reflection, just a little hint in the future, you're going to see us do some notices on our Facebook page and probably on Pinterest that we're going to have a journal, because journals are a great place to write privately about things like this. You might be a person who during this week realizes that they have these little teeny things that they did to one or two people this week. So really good time and a great topic to reflect on. Do no harm.
This is true, and when you're doing that, it includes, as we were saying too, the physical as well. I mean, let's say this past week you I don't know, you went back to childhood and you kicked over an animal. It would be good if you would reflect as to what was it inside that made you want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's probably not the end of the world for you or the ants, because the ants probably went ahead and rebuilt their hill. But really, it's something that we need to think about. Why is it that you have an impulse to do that type of thing?
Yeah, no, it's really a good thing to think about. So we should all look for ways to have the least amount of impact on our fellow creatures, people, animals. And in fact, together, I think we probably can make some pretty good things happen. Next week, we're going to have our fifth and final value on YouTube, to be followed by some other fun things. And we'll be doing a quick run through of the previous four values for everybody. And our topic next week is rational thinking and common sense. And we encourage everybody to visit our Facebook page and comment, and please comment on our YouTube channel.
Yes, we'd like to see you all there.
Do no harm.
Do no harm.